The following program is made possible by Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
In the last 2 decades, Silicon Valley has exploded, dominating the world's economy and our region.
And Carl Guardino has been at the center of that explosion. He's here. The game is Silicon Valley today and tomorrow. The game is on.
I am Kevin Mullen.
And I'm Mark Simon. Welcome to the game. We're in an unusual location today. We're shooting from the outdoors. Stick with us.
It's the most influential private organization in the region, perhaps the state and the nation. The Silicon Valley Leadership Group has gained that stature under the direction of Carl Guardino, our guest today. He's been the president and CEO for more than 22 years. And in that time, Silicon Valley has exploded as a dominating industrial powerhouse, as the center of our economy, and some say problems that plague our region.
Carl Guardino joined the leadership group in 1991 as a vice president, became president and CEO in 1997. With his leadership, the region has passed 3 regional ballot measures. Is that the right number, 3?
Yes.
Okay. It's hard to keep track. You do so many. That have resulted, among other things, in the BART extension to San Jose, financial support for the Caltrain electrification project, and countless other transportation and infrastructure projects. He also co-created the Housing Trust of Silicon Valley, which provides support to new homebuyers, and the Silicon Valley Turkey Trot, which has raised more than $9 million for local charities. Welcome. Thank you for being here. You've announced that you're leaving the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. Let's start with the direct question. Do you have another job lined up? Are you going to something, or is this going to jump off a cliff and see if you can fly?
Well, if you need a summer intern, you're going to let me know. No, when I made the decision, when my wife Leslie and I made the decision on New Year's Eve, it was after a lot of walking and talking, and in our faith tradition, praying about what might be next. And I just felt as a CEO, I couldn't start a search without first telling my amazing staff colleagues, my board of directors, and our members. And with the hope that hopefully I'll have something to offer in what will be next in my career.
Well, let's get to the rumor that began, because you haven't said where you're going next. You've heard this rumor. The rumor is that you're sick, that you're dying, that you're unwell in some way. I gather that's not the case. You look fine.
And well, as Mark Twain said, that the rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated. No, as far as I know, I'm very healthy. 23 years as a CEO, as you know, is more than 4 times the average tenure of a CEO in Silicon Valley. And it just felt like the right time to try what may be next, to try to make a difference, both for the innovation economy while building stronger communities, which is what the leadership group has allowed me to do for these 23 plus years as CEO.
So describe the leadership group when you ascended to the CEO position, what it was like, how it's changed, how the Valley itself has changed. What kind of a Silicon Valley did you inherit in that leadership capacity 22 years ago?
Kevin, thank you. It was fascinating because our founder was the co-founder of Hewlett-Packard, David Packard, whose view was that CEOs needed to engage directly. Our job is to not mess up that vision that he set for positive, proactive roles for CEOs and employers in our region. So the organization I inherited was a great team of 5, covering 3 issues with a budget of about $600,000. And as our work has grown and some successes that we hope benefit the communities in this region, so have our responsibilities. So our team is now 28 on the policy side, 5 on the foundation side that we established in 2002, a budget of about $6 million rather than $600,000, and 10 core issues where we try to make a positive, proactive difference. And boy, has our valley changed, hasn't it? We were almost still the Valley of Heart's Delight rather than Silicon Valley when I had the pleasure of assuming this role. And the membership has grown from 90 wonderful employers to 350 primarily innovation economy employers here in this region.
how has Silicon Valley changed? You know, it was probably dominated by chip companies and a good number, but not a huge number of manufacturers like HP. Some of the other companies that basically built their business around aerospace and government contracts. Now it seems as though it's such a diverse industry.
Yes.
That would seem to me to be the major change.
And it has been, because as innovation should happen with creative destruction, as Schumpeter, the economist, wrote about, when you ride a wave of innovation, at some point that wave commoditizes and only a few dominant players remain. Everyone else gets washed away. And then we've been blessed that new waves of innovation have happened here. So when we were created, it was called, to reflect the Valley, the manufacturing group. And our founder, David Packard, was prescient. He actually said in the minutes of the first board meeting, we'll call ourselves the manufacturing group until we come up with a better name. And that took years, and it became the leadership group, because that was the common core of our DNA, calling CEOs to be leaders, not just in their boardrooms, but in our communities as well, because software companies and others didn't feel that they should join because they weren't, quote unquote, manufacturers. So we've changed to reflect the driving industries of the innovation economy.
So when I think of your legacy, just as an observer and somebody who's worked with you, you have been a master at bringing private sector interest to the table and also educating them about their role in serving the public good, the common good, and the civic good. I think about the transportation work that's been done on your watch. Just tick those off for folks who aren't familiar at your role in getting those many transportation measures passed. What some of those challenges were getting those done and pulling those coalitions together, because that really is something of a legacy, I would think, as you look back on your career.
Kevin, thank you for the kind words. We see our role as being a builder of bridges rather than someone who burns them down. We have too much of that in a divided and divisive nation that's permeating down to the state and regional level now as well. And that was never Mr. Packard's vision for the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. And I'll often tell CEOs, we can be enraged or we can be engaged. And being enraged may feel good for a moment, but you don't get any progress made. It doesn't move the ball forward. And one of our core competencies has fortunately been not just to support ballot initiatives to make our region and state a better place, it's been to actually run and fund those campaigns. So 15 times in the last 23 years, I've actually gone on loan. I've put myself on loan to run ballot initiatives or co-run them. What have those focused on? What we call the issues, the being an acronym for T, traffic, H, housing, affordability and homelessness, E, energy and the environment, and the second E, education and the workforce. So we had the pleasure of working with you, June 2016, on Measure AA to better protect our bay and have flood resiliency. We've led 7 different county-wide and regional transportation funding initiatives, totaling more than $30 billion in local funds for improvements like 101-92 and 101-237, Caltrain electrification and modernization, BART extensions into Silicon Valley, and we've led numerous statewide housing bonds, 2002, 2006, 2018, totaling $11 billion, where, again, we're not who the consultant calls every 2 weeks and says, do you want this brochure in red or green? But we actually take time off. 100, 150 straight days, 100-hour weeks running the campaigns. And there's something satisfying, as you know, as an elected leader, at 8:01 on election night, hitting that refresh at the registrar of voters or the Secretary of State, and knowing that immediate return on whether or not voters and taxpayers agree with the vision of making this a better region.
Well, we're going to take a time out, not time off. Stick with us. We'll be right back with Carl Guardino from the Silicon Valley Leadership Group.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Welcome back to the game in our special outdoor edition. I'm Mark Simon. He's Kevin Mullen. And over here, patiently freezing his buns off, is Carl Guardino, Silicon Valley Leadership Group President and CEO, who's leaving. When's your last day? Is there a time frame?
We don't know. When I called my board chair, which he likes to say was the day I ruined his family vacation on January 2nd, I said, I'm committed to staying and handing the baton to my successor. How long will that take? And his immediate response was, well, we were thinking 2025. I told him no, but he thinks their thorough
5 to 7
will
months.
be 4 to 8 months.
4 to 8 months. And
that clock started January 2nd.
So probably by the end of the year at the latest, it sounds
yes.
like. Okay. We were talking about Silicon Valley, how it's changed. Obviously, there are a lot of people, I'm sure you've heard of them, who do not think it has changed for the better. It's so expensive to live here. Traffic is getting worse. You certainly have worked on some issues to try and help Caltrain, try and relieve traffic congestion with carpool lanes and all sorts of projects. But they blame the growth of tech. There's a real backlash toward the tech industry, and especially the measures you have supported have increased sales tax to pay for most of these projects. There's a sentiment, and we saw it to some degree in the FASTER discussion about whether or not there should be a regional measure. It's time for the tech companies to start putting up money to help solve the problems they're creating. What's your response to that?
We have always run campaigns where we place our wallets where our words are. You mentioned sales tax measures as one way to fund transportation improvements, which you've done so successfully here in San Mateo County as well. The truth of the matter is, San Mateo County employers pay about 40 cents of every dollar in sales tax collected. And because they're usually global companies competing internationally against competitors who aren't paying that tax, that's really a commitment in our region and our people. Same with Santa Clara County, 43 cents of every sales tax dollar collected is paid for by employers. So when we move forward, the leadership group has what we call a shared responsibility model. If we think something's important, it shouldn't be, hey, this is important, Mark should pay for it. It's, this is important to all of us, let's all contribute to the solution. That will always be the model of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. In terms of the innovation economy or any segment of our economy, quote unquote, creating our housing affordability challenges or our traffic challenges, Kevin knows this as an elected leader. We have not, as a state of 481 cities, consistently met the annual amount of homes we should build for hardworking Californians since 1989. That's why we have a deficit of 3.5 million homes, more than the other 49 states combined, and supply and demand, that's what's driven up prices. We shouldn't be blaming hardworking families who have a job, that the job is the problem. The problem is we haven't built homes for those families to live in as an entire state for 30 years.
But the perspective of some folks would be, yes, and by building all those housing, you are fundamentally changing my community from suburban to urban. It's not the community I bought my house in, it's not the community I thought I was living in. And the reason you need to build all this housing is because of all these jobs. You know, how can you damage my community in this way? I'd rather you didn't. That's the mindset you hear from people.
And I appreciate that too. And as a father of 3 young children, and I love my kids, I actually want them to be able to afford to live in the communities in which we're raising them, but I also don't love them so much that I don't want them to ever be able to leave our home because they can't afford it. So we have to strike that balance. And the role of the leadership group, we try to be a voice for the voiceless. Over the last 20 years, we actually go out and support at public hearings affordable home proposals, often not even for the workers at our own companies, but who waited at you at Starbucks or Pete's this morning? That person at the dry cleaners, the person at that restaurant or retail establishment. We all have to be a part of the fabric of this community. We all have to be able to afford to live here, as I was to a construction worker father and a hardworking stay-at-home mom with 4 young boys to feed. We need to, the reason they were able to do it was because California was actually building the homes to meet our population. We're not doing that anymore. So to those folks who say we shouldn't build more homes, please think about your own kids. They're not going to be able to afford to live here.
So there's no question we need to build more homes and try to meet that jobs, housing imbalance. What role, though, do the large employers who are doing exceptional work, the big biotech companies, for example, in my hometown of South San Francisco, what role do they have directly to provide housing for their workforce? I think there's a resistance to build on certain campuses specific, workforce housing for their workers. But what role do they have? What responsibility do they have? I mean, all of this it's a partnership with the local government and developers to build the housing. But can employers be doing more directly for their workers who are on our roads traveling from the East Bay, for example? How do we get them closer to the work site?
Yeah, such a great set of questions, Kevin. Let me break it down into 3 quick ones. Yes, employers need to be doing more. We often are frustrated at the leadership group of 350 member companies, large and small, global and local, but there are 14,000 innovation economy employers here in the Bay Area. We'd like to see more engaged. Those commute patterns that you're talking about, on any given work morning, 3.3 million of us in the Bay Area are going to 110,000 different job sites. And how do we make that work? So first, when we support a housing development, it is sustainable. It is around transit. We want to make sure that we're building that connection between where we're working, where we're living, and how we get there. Key that we do that. That's our DNA and our core.
Let me stop you there because we have to take a break. We'll hold that thought. We'll come right back. We'll be right back with you. Stick around. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, that's okay.
So now you can organize.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Welcome back to a special al fresco edition of The Game. I'm Mark Simon. He's Kevin Mullen. We're talking to Silicon Valley Leadership Group CEO and President, soon to be leaving to seek other adventures. Was the old phrase he used in the office, to pursue other opportunities. You were talking, I stopped you. You were talking about shouldn't companies be doing more? It was essentially a thoughtful question posed by Kevin.
And I couldn't agree more. And that, again, is the DNA of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. And we measure that in 3 ways: time, treasure, and talent. And the treasure part, yes, and that's why it's exciting that so many companies are stepping up, whether it's transportation solutions. When you think about those corporate shuttles alone, instead of 42 brake lights in front of you, you have 42 workers in one shuttle. That is amazing. And if you were to take those employers who do that in the Bay Area and the millions of dollars a year of non-taxpayer money that they're investing, they would be the 5th largest transit agency in all of Northern California. And it's mainly regional trips that our 27 very localized transit systems in the 9-county Bay Area aren't serving with the type of flexibility that's needed. So
your point is that they're already doing more than people think they are. We're giving them credit for.
And we need to do more still.
But especially in the area of housing, there's at least one candidate in the local state Senate race who's been advocating some sort of payroll or head tax. Companies with 1,000 employees, every time they add an employee, they have to put money to essentially house that the employee. What's your reaction? You know, Cupertino's proposing something like that. I think Mountain View is. There are a lot of places that are looking at something like some kind of a head tax or payroll tax.
You know, I was born and raised here in the Bay Area to working class dad and a stay-at-home mom. And what has happened over the last couple of decades, this great Bay Area is hollowing out its middle class. And we want to make sure that we stay a vibrant region that has jobs that we can build a middle and upper middle class. And the jobs that are in the innovation economy are mobile jobs. You can place that job in Silicon Valley, in Austin, where a home is 1/4 the price and 4 times the size, or Seattle, where it's 1/3 of the price, or regions around the nation, Salt Lake, Denver, Boston, all less expensive to live. We don't want to hollow out the middle class. So when people talk about, well, let's tax every job, it makes it sound like jobs are a bad thing. Every job is tied to a real person with a real family and real aspirations. We don't want to become the headquarter town of only executives who you can still rationalize keeping here with their salaries, because the jobs we're going to lose with these ideas of let's tax and penalize putting a job here are those middle and upper middle class jobs that can be done elsewhere.
So
bad economic policy, bad for families.
So we're not quite at that tipping point, but tell us sort of the thought process with senior executives when they talk about expansion of their facilities, their operations. You know, Mark Zuckerberg, I saw a headline about essentially we're not going to expand beyond our existing plans in the Bay Area. What other kinds of things are you hearing from big employers about the 20 years out, the 30 years out? What does this tech economy look like in the Bay Area?
Yeah.
What's that employer footprint look like?
Yeah. It's still robust, which is good, because 118 straight months of economic growth in California is a great thing, but let's not make that feel like it's a birthright. It's something we have to fight for every day, because I was here for the dot-com boom and then bust in 2000. 119,000 people lost their jobs. Same thing in 2008, almost the same number. It's taken years to get those jobs back. And in an innovation economy, it's cyclical. That's going to happen again. And we're not going to be saying, let's tax jobs out of existence when we hit those rough times again. So let's be realistic, as you have been in the Assembly, about reminding your colleagues of that fact. And in terms of what employers look at, go to our website. Our Silicon Valley Competitiveness Project with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation annually not only takes a hard look of employers' decisions around growth, location, and relocation decisions here, but compares us to our top competitor regions around the country, as well as regions on the rise, like Austin, Boston, Southern California, New York, and Seattle. And in some indicators, we are so strong. Let's celebrate it and stay strong. But in some very telling areas where these decisions are made, we have a lot of work to do. And they're mainly, as we said earlier, the issues of traffic, housing, and education and workforce.
One of the issues that sort of underlies all this conversation is the sense of income disparity. That we've had what I term growth without prosperity. You're talking about the hollowing out of the middle class. We all know people at the lower end who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to survive here. How does that get any better? And shouldn't the companies that are hiring these people find a way to lift everybody up?
Absolutely. And one of the initiatives that we're so excited about, called our Community College to Career Initiative, we're partnering with the 19 Bay Area community colleges, 360,000 students. 77% don't look like the 3 of us. They're not white. 54% are female. We know that in tech, some jobs absolutely require that 4-year or advanced degree. A lot of them don't. They can be well filled with a 2-year degree or even certified coursework. So we're marrying those 19 community colleges with each other and our employers, looking at 7 key job clusters that pay wonderful middle and upper middle class career jobs with great benefits that don't require a 4-year degree.
We're running short on time. As you leave, what are the 1 or 2 achievements that are really going to stand out for you to say, Boy, I'm glad I was part of getting that done.
Wow. Being on this show.
Of course. Yeah.
In addition to
that's
that,
a given,
yes, in addition to that, you're asking me to pick a favorite child, so I'll be careful.
I would think BART to San Jose is a substantial achievement that you're going to feel good about.
Yes, helping to address transportation and transit and affordable home issues that connect us all much better is important. One is establishing our Silicon Valley Leadership Group Foundation, because we wanted to build community while helping families in need. That is where we created and still run the Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot that has raised $9.7 million for great charities. The Google Santa Run Silicon Valley, the Lamb Research Heart and Souls Salad Bars for Schools run, and then those 15 campaigns around transportation, housing, and education.
We've got about 30 seconds left. What are you going to do next?
I don't know. I'm stepping out on faith. In my faith tradition, I didn't feel I could start a search until I had informed my board, my members, and my great staff colleagues about this transition, and I'm hoping I have something to offer. We're hoping to stay here in the Bay Area, where we've tried to make a contribution and our kids love, and we'll see what may be next.
Your background, even though you're working for an organization of private companies, has been public policy.
Yes.
Do you want to stay involved in public policy? Do you see yourself as a CEO of a nonprofit or some NGO?
It's a combination. I have a passion for a strong economy and our innovation economy, while building and lifting up communities, especially underserved communities. The leadership group has let me marry that passion because it's their DNA. I hope the next career step will allow me to do that.
Carl Guardino, thank you for being with us. Thanks for joining us on The Game, and thank you for being with us. I'm Mark Simon.
And I'm Kevin Mullen.
Join us next time on The Game. We'll be back indoors by then.